Good evening, America, and welcome back. I'm your host, Michael Woody O'Brien. This is the AbolishFiatSlavery.com hour here on Rense Radio Network and WideAwakeNews. I'll be your host for the next hour, and tonight we have a friend of the program, special guest. Welcome back to Doug Newberry. Thanks for coming in, Doug.
Hey, Woody. Always a pleasure to sit in with you.
Doug, we haven't talked in a while, and the last time we talked, we were not on the verge of World War III, which we certainly seemed to be at this moment. Everything seems to be about Syria. I have to tell you, today on Zero Hedge, there was a terrific article I've seen reposted all over the place. 22 reasons why starting World War III in the Middle East is a really bad idea. I'm wondering if you're on board. Do you have a 23rd reason for us?
Well, yes, I'll give you the 23rd reason, having not read the original 22. So, disclaimer, it might be on the list. These kind of interventions never end the way you think they're going to end. I mean, it's ridiculous how anybody can take a United States foreign policy seriously is beyond me, given that we're at war with Al-Qaeda, we support Al-Qaeda, we started Al-Qaeda, we funded Al-Qaeda. I mean, come on, enough already with the nonsense. And, so now nobody's behind this attempt at a war here. So now they're going to come out with the proof that Assad was gassing his own people. And I'm thinking, big damn deal. You people are dropping depleted uranium all over the Middle East. I don't hear anybody whining about that.
Well, it's not a war crime when we do it, apparently.
Apparently. Yeah.
It's the only way to be punished for a war crime is to blow the whistle on it, and you'll end up in jail like Bradley Manning. But aside from the fact that we don't really seem to have a dog in this race. I talked to a good friend of mine today who is in his middle 50s and has spent decades in special forces and is now a security consultant to oil companies, and he said there's 1,000 things that could result from us having a military engagement in Syria, and 999 of them are bad. It's ridiculous, the idea that we could end up with $1 billion a week no-fly zone with money we borrow from China or we QE into existence. To me, this almost feels like buying a treasury bond. It's return-free risk. What in the world could we possibly get out of this? And the part I think is bizarre is there's about 100,000 people that have died in this already. Why all of a sudden, if 200 of them are gassed to death by somebody, nobody really knows who. It could be the rebels, could be the CIA, it could be the Saudis, it could be the Israelis, because after all, the Israelis have more incentive for us to be invading all these countries, because every U.S. soldier that dies is an Israeli soldier that doesn't die, and it's $1 billion the Israelis don't have to spend. I, for the life of me, can't see what the compelling interest is, or what the heck we could possibly ever get out of this other than pain.
Here's the thing, and let's just go back to the very beginning. And, they say, well, this is a punitive strike. Well, to start with, Syria is a sovereign country. Who in the hell does the United States think it is to punitively strike anyone for any reason, right? I mean, a sovereign country is a sovereign country, or it's not. And we're not kings of the world here. And now, hang on. The second thing is, they're not going to destroy or eliminate his chemical weapons stockpiles. They're not going to perform regime change. So they're not doing anything. They're just they're going to drop a couple of tomahawks for no good reason at all. And I agree with you. Nothing good can come of it.
There's this curious aspect to these kind of situations. And this one, certainly with the WMD questions, sounds an awful lot like before we went into Iraq. And the thing,
like a sequel.
It does feel like a sequel. Like, well, we used this trick before, we'll use it again. But there's this part of me that is always curious about one aspect of these countries that have tyrannical leaders, where the tyrannical leaders, whether it's Saddam Hussein and his son, or Assad, and before Assad it was his father, where these people seem to not have any fear to walk among their own people, even though they've tortured and killed and really been very bad guys, that no man, and I'm going to put quotes around that phrase, in these countries ever seems to be willing to trade their life to save their country from one of these really bad guys. And when you compare that to the United States, I'm going to tell you, I don't think there's a county in the United States, especially Chicago, where Obama could walk unprotected and live to see another sunrise. I think that there is this curious thing where, at the end of the day, the Syrians have no one to blame but themselves for Papa Hassan and son Hassan in the same way the North Koreans don't. It's ludicrous that we have these Arabs that will strap a bomb to themselves and kill a busload of innocent people, but they never seem to be willing to kill one guilty person to have their own regime change. I don't understand these countries with tens of millions of men, and there's not somebody dying of cancer willing to say, hey, if I'm leaving, I'm taking one of these bad guys with me.
Yeah. No, I just don't see how we end up being the policemen of the world. That, the UN's not going to vote to do anything because China and Russia have vetoes and they're not in favor, right? NATO's calling the shot. And Congress gets a briefing. I mean, this is like a joke. I can't believe that I can't believe this is actually going to happen. There's no good reason for it. There's no real security interest at stake for the United States unless I did see a big video the other night, about 14 minutes long, about the pipelines in the area and that there are competing plans for how this gets built out. And, we're kind of insisting on ours. And,
well, it's curious about this, that more than any other conflict of the recent past, apparently the polling showed 60% of Americans said that the United States shouldn't intervene in Syria, and only 9% thought President Obama should act.
Right.
Usually the neo-con artists do a pretty good job of whipping up racism and fear and hate. But at this point, they haven't really managed to get the public on board. And I think more than anything, the public is showing that we have conflict fatigue.
Well, the funny part about the whole thing, if there's anything funny about it, is that all of a sudden MSNBC is a bunch of war hawks and Fox News is dragging out all the generals talking about what a bad idea this is. And I'm like, how times have changed in just 5 short years,
Well, yeah, I have to tell you something. I watched something the other day, and a guy who I normally do not agree with, he's a professor at Harvard, African American. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. You're probably going to know it and know who I'm talking about. Was down at the 50th anniversary of the King's speech and talked about how most of the left and most of the civil rights movement are all, as he called it, on the Obama plantation. They won't criticize him about drones. They won't criticize him about Gitmo. They won't criticize him about Bradley Manning. He said, has Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson ever uttered the words Bradley Manning? And that the entire left has totally caved to Obama, who he said it has turned out to be no different than Dick Cheney.
Exactly. Well, here's the funny thing about Obama is everything that he campaigned against and hated about the Bush people are now his policies, right?
Yeah, that really is just so. Cornell West was this. This professor's name. I have to say he's someone I almost never agree with on anything, but he certainly called the rest of the African American community leadership out, and he even said, you know what? Not a word will go up about war in Syria, and if we get boots on the ground there, it'll be black and brown Americans will do most of the dying.
Well, it's just we were talking about the other morning. We were talking about when you see Barack Obama on the world stage with guys like Vladimir Putin, right? I mean, Vladimir Putin, run the KGB for decades, has been a world power leader for, a long time. He looks at Obama and is like, this kid's trying to sell him some Boy Scout cookies or something, know? I mean, Obama's a community organizer, and he sits on the stage with Vladimir Putin, and you can see the contempt for Obama on Putin's face because he just can't believe he's forced to deal with this nincompoop.
I'm sure Putin probably looks at Obama and says, I used to eat guys like you for breakfast. But let's talk about the Russians for a second, because one of the things that I think is very, very dangerous here is I get the sense that Putin really is looking for a high-hanging curveball to slam the United States. And this is one of those circumstances. Syria is their client state. He's saying no. The Russians are putting some of their ships in play. It's very easy to see how
the Russians' only port in the region is in Syria. So they are an interested party here for sure.
It's easy to see how this could spin into World War III.
Oh, it's very easy to see how this happens. You strike Syria, the Iranians and the Syrians then strike Israel, right? And then we want to get more involved with the Iranians and the Syrians, and here come the Russians and the Chinese. And brother, I tell you, it's at that precise moment that you buy all the defense stocks, because they're going to start printing and spending money like you have never seen before.
Well, speaking of that, obviously, what's good for the defense contractors is usually bad for the economy overall. You have to worry about some of the people making these decisions are the idiots who think that war is good for the global economy, when of course it's just they don't understand the nature of the debt that it builds up. But when you look at the U.S. stock market, the blue chips, the Dow, the S&P 500. It really looks like it's rolling over, and we're into a bear market on some of these news. What do you say on that subject?
Well, 2 weeks ago, I sent an email out to my list, and I told them that we're at a very critical juncture, and we've been rolling over for the last couple of weeks. And I told them, I said, for the next 6 to 10 weeks, this is going to be a very bad deal for the stock market. In the first place, we had just tons of economic data coming out. In the last 2 weeks, we get GDP tomorrow, which will be, probably a surprise to a lot of them. But then you get Congress come, and then the whole Syria thing gets thrown into the mix, though that gives us a couple of big legs down. Now you got Congress coming back, the debt limit, the budget. They're going to try to defund Obamacare. They've been, all of them, teeing this up like there's going to be a battle royale. The debt limit is already, essentially
it's already breached.
Well, and they've come out and said we're not negotiating on the debt limit. Well, the last time we went through this, there was S&P downgrades, the market tanked. But there's the wild card. September 22nd is the elections in Germany. And nobody has mentioned word of the European debt crisis, Woody, in almost a year, because they don't want to rock the boat, right? If Germany gets somebody new elected, then it's a whole new Europe, right? Because they're the only ones with any clout or money. And so they got to get Angela Merkel reelected. And when they do, you watch the Euro debt crisis is going to come right back to the front pages.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so,
I'm sure. Well,
hang on. So I told my people 2 weeks ago that we may have seen the highs of the year, because the damage that can take place in the market over the next 10 weeks will be so severe that I don't know that the rally into the year end can make it all back up.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of the XLF as an overall market indicator, because the financial stocks, or I guess they could be better called the crime families, their stocks, I think, are usually a good bellwether for the market as a whole. And when they start to roll over and they start to look bad, they're such a big part of blue chip indexes. They're so financially overweighted. That tells you it's going to be a tough environment. And I would tell you the bank and the financial stocks and that XLF, they just look terrible at this point.
It's going to be a rough market, I think, for the next 6 to 10 weeks.
Well, the one thing that's been good is at least we've gotten the bullion off of the map, and it looks like we probably have seen a long-term low in silver and in gold, and because I'm a great student of that sector, and I would tell you one of the things that is always interesting is when you see the performance of the gold and silver miners cross over the performance of the underlying bullion. That's usually very, very bullish. A lot of money has been made here in the past 6 weeks in the miners as they go from fire sale kinds of prices to the point where the charts on those look terrific.
Well, it's funny. 4 weeks ago, if you'd have looked at the chart of any of the gold miners or silver miners, you'd have thought, these people were digging up, dirt, not gold.
Well, for a while, they looked like the only thing they were digging was their own graves.
Right. And I tell you, it was about a month ago when I told the folks on my list, I'm like, look, I think I'm starting to get bullish on coal stocks here, miners, the metals, the GDX, the GDXJ, all the individual names. And boy, they've really made quite a move off the lows back there. But I think it's time for them to take a little pause. But then I don't think this rally's over. I think this is the first leg of the next bull market in metals.
Yeah, I would agree. They're a little bit ahead of themselves here, and I think they're going to pause, and maybe they're going to pause and let the agricultural and grain parts of commodities start to catch up. There's starting to be bad weather reports for the dry grains.
Well, it's funny that you say that because we just looked at the DBA this morning, which is the Agricultural Commodities Index, and the chart looks quite good.
Yeah, there's lots of pieces. Me, I've been a big fan of coffee for a long time too. That's another one that I actually think that coffee is a better value than silver because coffee is at a place where it's at the same price it was 25 years ago. And think of all the monetary expansion that's occurred in the last 25 years, and there's still a commodity trading at the same dollar price it was 25 years ago. People worry about a war and the price of oil and maybe $10 a gallon gasoline if we really get into a shooting war in Syria. I have to tell you, they ought to be worried about a $5 a cup of coffee at their house at some point, a $20 cup at Starbucks, because the fundamentals for coffee are also really terrific. Now, let's just shift gears here for a second and kind of go to oil. We've had a lot of move up on oil.
Big move. Mm-hmm.
When there's not really a whole lot of demand, and not just the Syria, but the problem with Egypt. You got a lot of oil that's going through that Suez Canal. This really does look like it could be an oil shock like the 70s.
Well, it's a funny thing because if you look at the technical analysis of an oil chart, there's a little more upside. I mean, we saw this huge breakout. I wish I was doing video for you right now. Huge breakout of a gigantic triangle pattern on a monthly and a weekly chart a couple of months ago. And it's been rallying, and now you get this whole Middle East thing lighten up. And there's a little more room to the upside before it's going to hit some technical resistance. But after that, the sky's the limit. I mean, if it goes through that next technical resistance, then sky's the limit on the chart. Well,
I told my wife today that because since we moved to the farm, and we live only a couple miles away from a town where everything is. And I said, we're gonna figure out a way to get our gas consumption down to 60 gallons a month. I said, and she said, why 60 gallons? I said, because at $10 a gallon, that's about the most I'm willing to spend on gasoline is $600 a month. And she said, oh, that'll never happen. And I said, that's what the people said about $2 when the price was 20 cents. That will never happen. I said, when it comes to the inflation of pricing, no one should ever say that never happened. They should just say, well, that may not happen soon, because the very nature of our fiat money system is all prices are going to go up. They're forced to based on the money printing. And by the way, before we head to a break here, real quick at 28 minutes after the hour, I want to ask you, do you have an opinion yet as to who the new counterfeiter in chief will be to replace Ben Bernanke? I'm hearing today that Tim Geithner's name is back on the list.
Well, I will tell you this. I don't know which one of the criminals it will be, but it will be one of the criminals. And I will tell you this. If they're going to continue to pretend like the Fed is just some neat and clean pseudo-government agency, then it's Janet Yellen. If the criminals are really taking over and if they're pushing the end game and it's really on like Donkey Kong, then Larry Summers or Tim Geithner is your guy.
Well, I like the idea that it's going to be Janet Yellen, so when things go wrong, they can blame the girl and get people to question the wisdom of Hillary.
Oh, like they're going to blame the black guy on Obama?
Yeah, well, I have a theory that Obama is going to do everything he can behind the scenes to screw over Hillary's chance to ever sit in his current office. And I think when you get people to blame the girl for something as big as another financial crisis where a woman is in charge of the Fed, that's certainly as good as any other theory. But I think if it's someone other than Yellen or Larry Summers, it's going to be Geithner, because he and Obama worked together for a long time, and even Obama's mother worked for Geithner's father. Right. Hey, I'm Woody O'Brien. This is the Rinse Radio Network. We'll be back in a minute after the break.
If you hang outside, don't come in. I'll only run and hide. Who can it be now? Who can it be?
Heart-related health problems affect millions of people each year. Maybe you're one of the many who suffer from issues related to angina pain, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, unbalanced cholesterol, irregular heartbeat, or clogged arteries. There is a solution that doesn't involve expensive prescription drugs that only mask the problem and leave you with horrible side effects. If you are ready to live your life free of sickness, pain, and fear, live your life with increased vitality, energy, and youthfulness, and experience your body healing itself, then you're ready for Heart and Body Extract from Healthy Hearts Club. Heart and Body Extract has a 23-year proven track record of using certified organic herbs that make up an excellent formula to balance and support the heart and circulatory system. In as little as 2 weeks, you can feel amazing results when your 2-month supply of Heart and Body Extract today. Call 1-866-295-5305 or go to hbextract.com.
If you're taking 1, 2, 5, or more nutritional supplements every day, please stop. Simplify your supplementation with Bio Superfood, the most advanced nutritional whole food supplement you can buy. Men, women, children, and even Olympic athletes the world over have discovered Bio Superfood from BioAge.com and now take just one nutritional supplement instead of many. The Bio Superfood formulas are whole food products composed with 4 of the most nutrient-dense algae species found on Earth. Bio Superfood for the brain helps with focus, memory, clarity, and mood. Bio Superfood is a strong defender in the fight against radiation exposure. Bio Superfood has 0 toxicity, is safe, and has no contraindications whatsoever. Learn more and order your Bio Superfood formulas at BioAge.com. That's spelled BIOAGE.com, BioAge.com. Or you can call 877-288-9116. That's 877-288-9116. BioAge, the age of advanced organics.
Dr. Joe Schneller.
The efficacy that we're looking for, that we're going to prove, is that carnivora wakes up this immune system and makes it dominant.
Pastor Lindsey Williams.
I'm 77 years of age. I feel better than I did when I was in my 50s and 60s. I was so sick, I thought I was going to die. It relates to a product that you handle right here. Folks, you positively must, after this show, you've got to click on Carnivora. They must have it in their medicine cabinet.
That's CARNIVORA.com. Call 1-866-VENUS-FLY. That's 866-VENUS-FLY. 1-866-836-8735. That's 1-866-836-8735. Or visit CARNIVORA.com. That's carnivora.com and order now.
And we're back. I'm Michael Woody O'Brien, your host from AbolishFiatSlavery.com. And I'm also an investment newsletter writer, WoodyKnowsMarkets.com. I write a 401f, unregulated newsletter. The feds can't tell me what to do, but I can certainly give you some good advice on how to manage your money through the discount stockbroker of your choice. Our guest tonight, again, a good friend of the show, Doug Newberry. And before the break, we were talking a little bit about Syria and kind of all the spillover effects in this. I want to turn just for a second and talk about J.P. Morgan. Boy, they certainly have been just having an avalanche of bad publicity for J.P. Morgan. Their London whale trader, I guess, was just arrested in Spain and is fighting extradition. And as I look at all the problems of J.P. Morgan, now that they're actually arresting someone, it's always, it seems, it's a former person and never a current person for one of these institutions. I would say, they could arrest Jamie Dimon anytime it is that they want. What do you think about the perils of J.P. Morgan at this point?
Well, I will tell you this. All the too big to fail banks are just a disaster of legal bills and a disaster of lawsuits. And I mean, they're literally, see, when you're a criminal, Woody, what happens is inevitably you end up being sued by everyone you do business with. And that's what's happening to these big banks. They're being, sued by the people they sold the mortgage-backed securities to, all the bond funds, the pension funds, the individuals who took the mortgages. I mean, their whole little scam blew up in their face. But not to worry because, they're too big to fail and too big to jail, and the government will clean it all up and they'll pay some slap on the wrist fine and people will lose their chance at ever having recovery. That's not to say that there aren't billions of dollars worth of liabilities.
Well, but something though, and because J.P. Morgan just had a case where some billionaire that I'd never heard of actually won a case about mortgage-backed securities, and they were ordered to pay damages.
Right.
But the fact is J.P. Morgan is the Fed's bank. When they have these damage payments, they can just knock on the window and say, "Hey, we need some of that 1 basis point per year money."
Right.
To pay this fine. And they probably call the APMEX people and reserve an ounce of gold so that when, gold is $100 million per ounce, they'll be able to use the ounce of gold to pay off the loan from the Fed that they were paying 0.1% per year. The fine just becomes a cost of doing business, like a toll gate. If you're a truck driver, they go on to do other crimes.
The funny thing is that they think somehow making a bank pay a fine is punishment. But the banks just create as much money as they need, right? Either on their own or through the Fed window. And so it's just a joke. It's a joke. You commit $1 trillion worth of fraud, you pay a couple of billion in fines. It's a joke.
Do you know, I know when I first came into the investment business in 1978 as a young, 20-year-old broker, that was back at a time where if you committed a financial crime, you could actually go to jail.
Oh, yeah.
You could actually be handcuffed, and you could go to a real jail. Not a jail where you would take your golf course, a jail where you would be afraid to take a shower, a bang-me-in-the-ass jail where an embezzler could be in the same cell as somebody who had robbed a liquor store or raped a grandmother. And I still think that the number one thing that is wrong with the financial system is there's always somebody available to be thrown under the bus, to be the sacrificial lamb or the scapegoat for this. But no one ever really goes to a jail where they're going to have to be, afraid of afraid for their anal virginity. Or their life. And it would seem to me, I remember in the middle 80s, there was a case in Pennsylvania where a couple of guys rigged the lottery to somehow make the number 666 come up, and they had all kinds of money. Well, you know what? They sent those guys to White Hill Prison in Cumberland County, which was a really bad place. I mean, it was the bad guys from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh who went to White Hill Prison. And I remember people who I knew who worked in the state said, there's never been a better preventive to white-collar crime in Pennsylvania than that, because people know you're going to go to a really bad jail. And I just think if you took someone like Jamie Dimon or Victor Pandit or Lloyd Blankfein and put him in a maximum security jail, put him in some place where it's not going to be fun. Give him the treatment they gave to Bradley Manning. And I think all of a sudden, the idea that, this is a real penalty to a person and not just an entry on a balance sheet that a bank had to pay a fine, I actually think that would have a dramatic effect.
Well, when you hear Eric Holder say that, and his department come out and say that they can't go after the individuals in the bank because it poses systemic risk, then, dude, all hope is lost. If we don't have a rule of law, if we just allow the criminals to run right over us and we can't prosecute them, I mean, seriously, what are we fighting for?
Well, I think there is the falsest of false premises that's based on the idea that you have an institution that's too big to fail, because the logical argument that these people always try and sell is that in order to be globally competitive, we need to have these big money center banks, because if we don't, somehow all this international lending business will end up in Paris or London or, Berlin or someplace else, to which I say, good, let them have it. Okay, let them put this anchor around their neck and try and keep their head above the water. The fact is if we dug a big hole, if we took one of these sinkholes that pops up around the country and put the headquarters, demolished the buildings of J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, Wells Fargo, and put them in the hole and covered it up with cement like it was toxic waste. The fact of the matter is we don't need national banks. We survived as a country a very, very long time with New York banks taking care of people in New York and never even crossing into New Jersey. And being in the business of banking, of making deposits and loans, as opposed to, casinos with a 24-hour-a-day crapshoot around the world in the form of a big dice table. We don't need to protect these people. We can live in a world where if we're not globally competitive in banking, so what? The truth is, the thing we need to be globally competitive in is manufacturing and agricultural robots and things that people actually need to be able to eat and have water and be able to make things. Because the truth is, this used to be a country where we would make things, mine things, and grow things. And one of the reasons our economy is so screwed up is we're not doing much of any of those anymore.
Right. Well, I will tell you this. I was looking at some stuff the other day, and here's what I think is one of the most disturbing parts of our banking system, right? As part of the current law, right, derivatives are a super class asset, right? So they get paid first. If the banks were to ever go down, their derivatives exposures get paid first.
That's just crazy.
Oh, it's absolutely insane, right? Because there's not enough money on the world to pay for these derivatives bets. I think there's estimates that the derivatives market's between $700 trillion and $1.5 quadrillion, right? And these guys get top dog first. Here's the kick. It's also law in the United States right now. You saw the bail-in that they did in Cyprus, where they literally took the depositors' money, right? That's the law here. If the banking system were to really suffer a big blow, the derivatives bets get paid first, and then the depositors and you are considered by law an unsecured creditor of your bank. The money's not yours.
Just insane. Hey, when we come back from the break, we got to talk about somebody from Goldman Sachs getting arrested for rape and a banker pleading guilty for using TARP money for a condo. I'm Woody O'Brien. This is the AbolishFiatSlavery.com hour here on the Rents Radio Network and Wide Awake News, and we'll be back in a minute.
Hey guys, Charlie McGrath here at WideAwakeNews.com, and I'm here to tell you I believe that Chris and the folks over at SeedsNow.com offer the best product at the best prices with the best service of anybody in the market. But don't take my word for it. Listen to what some of their customers have to say. Joshua in Florida writes, exceeded my expectations. Shipping was prompt and a number of my plants are already starting to sprout. Thanks for being great. And Ryan in California writes, I just received my Homestead Seed Bank, my all-in-one prepper pack, and seed-to-seed storage and growing guidebook, and I could not be more pleased. Thanks, Seeds Now. Now I can start growing and get off the GMOs. Keep up the great work. And the list goes on and on. Guys, it's time to make seedsnow.com an integral part of your long-term preparedness strategy. Please call them at 877-344-4669. That number again, 877-344-4669. Or better yet, visit them today at seedsnow.com.
Is what you are currently doing to relieve your pain working for you? Do you have chronic pain in your knees, your elbows, your joints, your back, your muscles? Have you tried going to the doctors and the naturopathic doctors, the back cracks, the motions, the potions, the lotions, and nothing seems to really last? There's a new product called a placebo enhancer. Now, don't laugh. The name is to avoid tyranny from the drug cartels that want to keep everybody on a leash. This product is advanced science. It's cutting edge. It's quantum physics-based, energy-infused liquid suspension with a transdermal magnesium applicant. You spray a couple sprays on where it hurts, and that's all you have to do, and within 20 minutes it's in every one of your cells. Go to painsucks.info and get the information. That's painsucks.info. Again, you can get a free trial bottle. Just pay shipping and handling at painsucks.info. Your pain isn't going to go away on its own, so get your trial bottle immediately. Painsucks.info.
Charlie McGrath of WideAwakeNews.com here with a question for my friends at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion. What do they know that we don't? Insiders and a who's who list of elite have made it crystal clear that we are headed for catastrophe, putting out warning after warning, urging people to batten down the hatches. Billionaire George Soros has recently been dumping stocks and at the same time acquiring millions in gold. In fact, in a recent interview, he was quoted as saying, "I'm not here to cheer you up. The situation is as serious and difficult as I've experienced in my career." Out of control government deficit spending and a Federal Reserve that's only solution seems to be print more fiat currency will lead to a weaker dollar and massive inflation on necessity items such as energy and food. If you have wealth to protect, please visit my friends at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion. Gabe Elton and the folks at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion have many Wide Awake News customers because they're honest, they're fair, and they won't sell you paper promises or product they do not have. Call Gabe Elton at 800-552-4109. That number again, 800-552-4109, or visit them online at austincoins.com.
Make a promise, take a vow, trust your feelings, it's easy now. Understand the voice within and feel a change already beginning. Oh, won't you tell me again?
And we are back. I am Michael Woody O'Brien, investment newsletter writer, economist, and small-scale organic farmer here in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. The coolest little town in America. We have a main street that doesn't even have a corporate store of any kind. No McDonald's, no Starbucks, no Dairy Queen, nothing on the main street of our town but mom and pop stores and a little college. I would say it's one of the coolest places to live. And if you like history, we're just a mile or two from the Antietam battlefield across the river in Maryland. I'm here tonight with my guest, Doug Newberry, and we've been talking about Syria and markets and banks and banking problems. And we were talking a little bit about J.P. Morgan. And one of the things I wanted to say is the difficulty that I think everybody ought to have with these financial institutions is they remind me a lot of Enron, where it's a big black box and you really don't know what's inside there. And you have no way to know that they're telling the truth about anything.
Right. They're too big to govern. Did you see the story that came out today of the Wall Street Journal was breaking this, that the big accounting firms, KPMG and the big auditing firms, they get like 39% of their audits are deficient. And that was good compared to like some other firm. And I was like, what? I mean, are these banks that they're trying to audit so big that you can't even count it all? Like, remember when Donald Rumsfeld lost track of $2.3 trillion the day before September 11th?
Well, I think part of my problem is it's too easy for banks that are clearing their own trades to almost run like a Madoff scheme and to create statements for accounts and assets that don't even exist.
Right. And the whole idea of, being able to clear their own trades.
It reminds me of this thing that years ago Ross Perot once said about infidelity. He said, if your wife can't trust you, how can I? And I think, the idea that anybody want to be a shareholder at JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or Skank of America or Wells Fargo or Citibank, when in fact, nobody in their right mind would trust these guys as far as you could pick them up and throw them.
Well, absolutely not.
And you know what? I'm a 6'6", 300-pound former hockey player. I could probably throw Jamie Dimon a good 10 feet. And that'd be 9.5 feet further than I would trust him.
I hear you. No, dude, it's a terrible thing. I forget who made the quote, but he said, sooner or later, the last great war on this planet, it has to be fought between the people and the bankers.
Well, Alex Jones says every now and then it's us against the bankers. It all comes down to that. The government is just the errand boy, the pawn for the bankers that are behind them. And it does seem to me that almost 99.9% of the time, the banks are like a bald eagle. They're a protected species. Nothing ever seems to happen to them. They never are in any real peril. So when I see a story like today where someone who works for Goldman Sachs by the name of Jason Lee is indicted on a rape charge, I get glee in my heart, and it certainly is humorous to think that apparently somebody at Goldman Sachs was tired of just raping investors and actually decided to actually rape a person. But he's been indicted on 3 counts of rape. And the interesting thing is he hasn't been terminated. But we will see what comes of this. But he is apparently a treasury bond trader. But to have someone from Goldman Sachs arrested for anything is certainly an interesting event because it almost never happens.
I know. You really, I can't believe. Here's the thing about all the financial crimes that took place is a lot of the stuff's not against the law. It's real unsavory. They gambled with money they shouldn't have gambled with. They blew the whole system up, destroyed $7 trillion worth of people's wealth, right? But what they did, in many cases, technically wasn't against the law.
Well, there was a story today, speaking about that, of a banker by the name of Darrell Lane Woods, who was the head of Main Street Bank in Ashland, Missouri, who got some TARP money, got over $1 million from the TARP program in January of 2009, and in February 2009, he used $381,000 of the money to buy himself a luxury condominium in Florida, and he's now in really big trouble, and he is pleading guilty and might face some jail time, not because he used TARP money to buy a condo, but that he turned around and failed to disclose it.
Yes, it's the failure to disclose the condo that's the crime. It's not buying the condo.
Yeah, the failure to disclose the condominium was a material misrepresentation of facts when he filled out his TARP report. And I just thought, wow, if somebody fails to disclose something and materially misrepresents the facts, if that's something you could go to jail for, would there be anyone in Washington? Would it not be like, that show on cable, Life After People, where you would just have monuments and buildings and there's not anyone there? I mean, Washington, D.C., the business of the town is misrepresenting facts and failing to disclose relevant data. It just seems to me that this is almost laughable, that they're not going to put the guy in the slammer for basically stealing TARP money and using it for his own benefit. They're going to do it because he failed to disclose that when we live in a country whose government fails to disclose 1 million things a day. It just seems silly.
No, dude, I got to tell you, we're really, really far down the road, and I don't know that there's any political solutions left. I don't know what to.
Well, I can help you with that. There are no political solutions. This will not change as a result of the election. This will only change because of collapse or revolution. Those are the only two outs. Kennedy was right. When peaceful change becomes impossible, violent change becomes inevitable. And I think every day as I look at the decline and collapse of our society, and it is a slow motion collapse, I think there's only two endgame scenarios. The one is there is a revolution and the military decides to back the people instead of back the politicians. Two, there is a revolution and the military decides to back the politicians and it becomes the shortest revolution in American history. Or three, and this is my favorite scenario, people are wise enough not to start a revolution against the government, but we start to have cells of patriots around the country who start lead poisoning important corporate leaders and politicians in a way that forces the elite of this country to change.
Oh, I don't know, man. I think that I think the end game is this, right? I mean, we know that the global elites, all they lust for is power. They want to run the world. I mean, they already do, but they want it to be clear, And so in the end, this global debt Ponzi blows up, and that's when we'll lose our sovereignty because we'll go to the global currency, and then it's all over. I mean, then I don't know that liberty will ever reign supreme anywhere on the earth.
Do you know, I'm a kind of a big believer that Gerald Celente has one thing right, and that is when he says, when people lose everything, they lose it.
Yeah,
and I think it's that desperate men that do desperate things. And my wife likes to joke that the only reason the Federal Reserve Building is in Washington and New York is not in a pile of rubble is because no doctor has told her husband that he has cancer yet. I do find it amazing to me the number of people who are wide awake about the banking system. I find myself going, how can Jamie Dimon go on a golf course and not worry about somebody?
A sniper.
Yeah, not worry about a sniper. It really is. It goes back to that thing we talked about before in the Middle East about how Saddam Hussein could walk among his people. Obama couldn't go in any county in the country without security and not be beaten to death with his own shoe. But again, he's the puppet of the people who are really running the show, the real men behind the curtain. And they walk around with impunity and without fear. I saw a broadcast on PBS the other week that talked about an address on Park Avenue that had 8 different billionaires in this one building. 6 of them were hedge fund looters. And I just thought, why would anybody, want to blow up anything in New York other than that building? That would have real effect. Because to me, until the leaders personally feel that their neck is on the line, nothing ever changes.
Well, I tell you, I don't, because here's the thing, right? When you get the elite class like that, think about how big of a bank JP Morgan or Bank of America is, right? You could knock off the top 100 guys and there's a bunch of junior level wannabes, man, ready to fill that vacuum like you can't believe.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. But the fact is if your neighbor's house is burnt down by a pyromaniac and a house a mile away is burnt down by a pyromaniac, you're gonna start to wonder when the pyromaniac's gonna get to your house and you're going to take, corrective kind of action.
Hang on. That's the funny thing about the whole financial crisis, dude, is they got most people convinced that this is because some poor idiots bought more house than they could afford.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hey, Doug, we got a minute left. Tell people how they can find you.
Well, if you're looking to find me, you can pop over to investingsystems.com and check out, our service that we offer. We do 3 live shows a week in the mornings for the paying members while the market's open, and 2 live shows a week at night on Wednesdays and Sundays at markettoolbox.tv.
Hey, Doug, thanks for being with us again. I'm Michael Woody O'Brien. Follow SpiotSlavery.com. and Woody knows Mark Stockton here on the Rents Radio Network. Shout out to my good friend, buddy and pal, Charlie Casper. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the other side.